And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Disney is in full damage control mode, and the situation is far worse than it initially seemed. The Snow White remake has disastrously flopped at the box office, with insiders now referring to it as a $120 million catastrophe. Disney executives are panicking, pointing fingers at each other, and holding emergency meetings behind closed doors. What's even more shocking? They're reportedly asking their lead actress, Rachel Zegler, to pay back some of the money.
Disney and all these media companies, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects, right? Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
Yeah, but they're all lunatic. I mean, how many people in Hollywood, maybe not to this extent, but how many people do you hear about actors you love? You love what? Look at Robert De Niro. I love like basically every movie he's ever done. Every time that guy opens his mouth as a private citizen, I'm like, oh my God.
Yes, you heard that right. Rumors are flying that Disney might actually force Rachel Zegler to pay back part of the losses. The studio is reportedly blaming her for brand damage, failed PR, and the massive wave of negative publicity directly linked to her name. And this isn't just Hollywood gossip. This could be an industry first. According to multiple insiders, after the film's disastrous opening weekend, a high-level emergency meeting was held to assess the damage. And here's where things took a shocking turn. Executives allegedly started discussing whether Zegler's actions, including her viral interviews mocking the original Snow White, her controversial political comments, and her tone-deaf press tour, could be considered a breach of her contract.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Okay.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. That people will assume is a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie, right. Andrew Burnap. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows?
Why some sources claim Disney's legal team has already stepped in, exploring whether they can use morality clauses or hidden PR performance triggers in Rachel Zegler's contract to hold her accountable. This isn't just damage control, it's corporate warfare. And Rachel? She might be the first casualty. But here's where it gets even wilder. Insiders say the mood in that meeting wasn't just disappointment, it was pure fury. According to one source, Disney's top executives were livid. One of them allegedly yelled, "She torched $1 billion brand in under a year, and we paid her to do it." Another insider claims that when the idea of financial restitution was brought up, the room was filled with nods of agreement. Whether that means cutting her bonuses, canceling back-end deals, or forcing a public apology isn't clear. But one thing is, Rachel Zegler is no longer seen as an asset. She's a liability.
Wouldn't. And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue shitting on Snow White and the prince and young love and women who want to get married and Steven Spielberg, the executive producer of her previous movie, and white people who she claims wanted to know if she was really a Latina on her first movie.
And here's where things get even messier. While the public sees Rachel posting apologies and trying to backtrack, what they don't know is that those posts might not even be her own words. Insiders claim that Disney's PR team ghost-wrote parts of her apology, pressuring her to act remorseful in an attempt to calm fan outrage and soften the backlash. If these rumors are true, Rachel Zegler isn't just being blamed for the flop, she's being forced to pay for it, both financially and professionally, and if Disney actually pulls this off, whether by reclaiming damages or forcing changes to her contract, it could send shockwaves through Hollywood.
Talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now, and how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her." And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, good job, Rachel. And then she, like, minutes later, followed it up with, and never forget, free Palestine. This is just like a few months after 10/7. It was like, it hadn't even been a year. And they were like, my God, what?
And isn't her co-star Jewish?
Yes, Gal Gadot, whatever.
Gadot.
I mean, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
She's Jewish, and apparently this actually, all hell broke loose. Gal started getting death threats. She's Israeli, and I think served in the IDF.
She did.
They flew an executive, one of the producers, out to go.
Rachel Zegler is reportedly in complete shock, allegedly fighting back tears after realizing the full scale of the financial disaster surrounding Snow White. Insiders say she was led to believe this role would cement her as Disney's next big star. Instead, she's now caught in the middle of a corporate firestorm. Her initial excitement about playing such an iconic role has been completely overshadowed by the film's stunning failure and the relentless wave of criticism that followed. So, yeah, it's safe to say she's not exactly in the running for an Academy Award. What was once hyped as Disney's next big triumph is now being called one of the studio's worst box office disasters in recent memory. This film was meant to be a cornerstone of Disney's strategy to modernize their animated classics. Instead, it's become a high-budget cautionary tale about what happens when modern messaging takes priority over storytelling. Critics aren't just calling it a box office flop, they're calling it a brand disaster that alienated both old fans and new audiences. On paper, Snow White had everything: nostalgia, a massive budget, and a fresh-faced lead. But instead of a hit, Disney got a lightning rod for controversy, and many believe it wasn't just bad marketing or bad timing. It was fundamental mistakes in tone, casting, and public relations that doomed the film.
In Hollywood, I mean, maybe things have changed a little bit. Didn't they, Megan, tell me, isn't this the one where they actually took the dwarves out of the Seven Dwarves?
Yes,
Yep.
we have CGI dwarves now.
Okay, yeah, because little people didn't need jobs either.
Yeah.
But it's
Peter Dinklage wanted the whole field to himself. Went out there and was
kicked the
like,
ladder down
this
behind
is
him."
insulting,
Yeah.
unless it's me.
He kicked the ladder.
Yeah, he
The
got his
ladder.
money in Hollywood. And now he's like,
Oh,
don't
nicely
hire
done,
anyone else.
Smug. The ladder.
That was nicely done.
That was low.
No, but I mean, he got his money acting as a little person. Now he's saying it's demeaning for them to have those roles. He acted as a dwarf on like the most popular show on TV for 10 years, made millions of dollars. Now he's like, how dare people hire dwarves to act as dwarves? It's ridiculous. He got his money and then kicked the ladder down behind him.
The thing that really shocks me about this story, Disney and all these media companies, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects, right? Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing before you?
Social media is buzzing with intense speculation, as viewers and industry insiders alike dissect every detail, from the behind-the-scenes drama to Disney's overall strategy. The question on everyone's mind is, how did this seemingly unstoppable Disney machine crash so spectacularly? With all the money, branding, and star power behind it, Snow White should have been a surefire hit. Yet, it has become a cautionary tale for Hollywood, illustrating the risks of ignoring the needs and expectations of a core fan base. At the heart of this disaster are Rachel Zegler's inflammatory comments about the original movie, which immediately set the stage for the film's rocky reception. From calling the original Snow White creepy, to mocking the love story and even branding the prince a stalker, Zegler's public remarks seem dismissive of the very legacy that Disney fans hold dear. These comments weren't just offhanded critiques. They revealed a clear disconnect between the film's creative direction and the audience's values. Adding fuel to the fire, Zegler's divisive political opinions further alienated viewers. What could have been a refreshing take on an old classic turned into a cultural battleground, dividing audiences along ideological lines. Meanwhile, the film's massive departure from the original's plot only served to underscore that the movie wasn't aimed at pleasing longtime Disney fans. The consequences have been swift and severe. Disney, once confident in its live-action remake strategy, is now left re-evaluating its entire approach to future projects in the wake of this. Fallout!
Of sort of showing their conservative
It's also a generational thing. I mean, her generation has basically grown up being told every opinion you have, post it online, share it with the world. You're the most special person. The world revolves around you. Everyone has to change to fit your beliefs because you're so special and you're so important and everything you say is validated and that's your truth. And that's not going away anytime soon. The other problem is Disney keeps doing this shit.
Yeah.
They don't care how many times they lose money. I mean,
They're going to learn a lesson on this one, though.
I don't think so. I mean, they're projected to lose between $200 and $400 million.
There was a time when just announcing a live-action Snow White remake was enough to get fans excited. With hundreds of millions invested, expectations were sky high. But now, the industry is stunned by just how badly it flopped, both domestically and internationally. Instead of a global blockbuster, Snow White has become a cautionary tale for the ages. From the very start, warning signs were flashing. Reports say the budget spiraled out of control, ballooning somewhere between $170 to $270 million, thanks to delays, reshoots, and production setbacks. A Hollywood strike paused filming. A COVID outbreak stalled momentum. There was even a literal fire on set. Every step forward was followed by a major setback. Rumors swirled. Was this movie cursed? Even within Disney, executives had doubts. Some whispered that remaking such a beloved classic with a radical new spin might not have been the smartest move. But at that point, there was no turning back. Money had been spent, sets were built, and, most critically, Rachel Zegler was already locked in as the face of the franchise. Rachel Zegler, the breaking point. From the moment she was cast, Zegler drew attention. As a relative newcomer, she was under immense pressure stepping into the role of Disney's very first princess. At first, she seemed thrilled, but soon, her public comments sparked controversy. In interviews, she mocked the original Snow White, calling it creepy, questioning the prince's role, and even calling him a stalker. Fans were blindsided. Snow White isn't just a movie, it's a cornerstone of animation history. Instead of honoring the legacy of the original, Zegler's tone felt dismissive, even hostile. Some Disney loyalists took it as a direct insult to Walt Disney's legacy and to the generations who grew up loving the original. And then, things got even worse. Zegler doubled down, insisting that the film needed a modern update, removing the classic love story and turning Snow White into a fiercely independent woman. She dismissed the damsel in distress narrative, arguing that modern audiences wanted something different. But instead of coming across as progressive and thoughtful, her blunt delivery started to feel smug to many fans. What could have been a nuanced conversation about modernizing classic tales instead came off as mocking not just the film, but the fans themselves. Her words weren't just critiques of a fairy tale, they felt personal to Disney's most devoted audience. While some appreciated the message of empowerment, many felt her tone was condescending, and that's when the backlash truly exploded. Condescending and combative, Rachel's push for a stronger, non-romantic lead could have landed well, but it was delivered in a way that felt like a dismissal of tradition rather than an evolution of it. The more she tried to explain her perspective, the more viewers felt alienated. Instead of building bridges, her interviews only widened the gap between the film and its core fan base. What could have been a meaningful discussion about growth and modernization quickly turned into a battleground of ideologies. And Rachel? She found herself at the center of a storm she arguably helped create. The backlash was swift. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Star Not My Snow White" and "I'd boycott Snow White." Memes flooded the internet with sarcastic captions mocking her quotes and plastering her face onto old Snow White clips. And then, the real controversy surfaced. Political posts from Rachel's past resurfaced. Tweets where she aggressively targeted Donald Trump and his supporters, claiming they'd never know peace, only added fuel to the fire. For a brand that thrives on broad appeal, this was a PR nightmare. Suddenly, Snow White wasn't just about a princess, it had become a battleground in the broader culture war. It wasn't about fairy tales or reimaginings anymore. It was about identity politics, legacy, and who gets to define modern values. For Disney, this was the worst-case scenario. Instead of uniting audiences across generations, Snow White had sparked a generational rift. Behind the scenes, Disney scrambled to clean up the mess. Executives called emergency meetings, PR teams worked overtime, and damage control became the new priority. Rachel issued an apology, hoping to soften her previous comments and calm the waters, but it backfired. Critics didn't buy it. The timing felt too convenient, too coordinated with the movie's release. Many saw the apology as nothing more than calculated spin, not genuine reflection. Fans weren't any more forgiving. Online discussions dissected every word of her statement, pointing out what was missing and what still rubbed them the wrong way. Instead of easing the backlash, the apology seemed to deepen the divide. For many, it confirmed their suspicions. This wasn't a heartfelt reflection. It was corporate damage. Control at its finest. Meanwhile, Disney pulled back on promotional efforts. Red carpet events were scaled down, and press appearances became more controlled, fearing that another off-the-cuff remark from Zegler could pour even more fuel onto the fire. By the time the premiere came around, it felt more like a quiet screening than a Hollywood spectacle. Then came opening weekend. Disney had hoped for a modest hit, something to at least justify the budget and restore confidence in their live-action remake strategy. Instead, they got a historic flop. Domestically, the EEE film barely passed $43 million. The film earned a shockingly low $43 million domestically, a far cry from expectations, considering the massive marketing push and brand recognition behind Snow White. For a studio that typically dominates opening weekends, this was a gut punch. Globally, the film barely pulled in $87 million during its first few days, still a decent number on paper, but it falls embarrassingly short of covering production and promotional costs, which some reports suggest topped $250 million. The movie not only failed to meet expectations, but didn't even come close to covering basic expenses like distribution and advertising. Industry insiders were stunned. Analysts who had been cautiously optimistic began recalculating their projections overnight. Some suggested the film might not even reach break-even territory. Streaming rights, merchandise, and international rollouts wouldn't be enough to save it. For comparison, even underperforming live-action remakes like Dumbo performed better, both financially and in public perception. What made it worse was the lack of positive buzz. There were no surprise reactions, no viral moments, nothing to spark excitement. In the eyes of many, the movie was a total fizzle. It was the kind of flop that can shake an entire studio's confidence. For Rachel Zegler, the underwhelming debut added another layer to her already crumbling narrative. Speculation soon swirled around who was to blame. Was it the script, the direction, or the marketing? Ultimately, all fingers pointed back to the film's most visible face, Rachel Zegler. Hollywood insiders began whispering that Disney may no longer be interested in working with her. Some suggested that deals had already been quietly scrapped, while others hinted that Disney might even explore legal options to recoup losses. Whether or not she's formally dropped, it's clear that her future with the House of Mouse is hanging by a thread. In the wider industry, Rachel's reputation has taken a hit. Some producers reportedly see her as radioactive, fearing that casting her in future projects would ignite backlash even before production begins. In Hollywood, perception is everything, and when a star becomes synonymous with controversy, it's harder to greenlight projects with them attached. Meanwhile, fans are still debating what went wrong. Some argue the fault lies with Disney for trying to modernize a story that didn't need fixing. Others feel the casting was wrong from the start. But most agree that Rachel Zegler's comments did real damage. Rotten Tomatoes scores plummeted, audience reactions were scathing, and as memes and backlash continued to snowball, Disney had little choice but to go into silent mode. Even Rachel's co-stars backed away from public statements. Martin Kaba, who played Grumpy, alluded in an interview that the controversy had robbed the cast of what should have been a celebration. Today, Rachel Zegler stands at a crossroads. She could take time away from the spotlight, rebrand and rebuild, or she could double down, which many believe would only deepen the divide. In any case, she's no longer the promising new face of Disney. Instead, she's become a cautionary tale. The Snow White fallout has turned into more than just a box office story. It's a Hollywood warning sign. If you underestimate your audience, disrespect a legacy, and mishandle your platform, no amount of budget or brand power can save you. especially when your name is tied to one of the biggest flops in recent memory. Do you think Rachel Zegler can make a comeback, or is this truly the end of her Disney fairy tale? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more wild stories from behind the scenes of Hollywood. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.